Hi, this week we're learning Parshas Emor, which teaches us the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer, counting the days towards Maimed Har Sinai, Shavuos, Kabalas HaTorah. And it's not coincidental that the same time that we started counting Sfiras HaOmer on the second night of Pesach, immediately after Pesach, we started learning Pirkei Avos. Counting Sfiras HaOmer and learning Pirkei Avos is preparations for receiving the Torah. Because as Chazal teach us, Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah. Without Derech Eretz, even a person who learns Torah, unfortunately that learning is not worth all that much. The Torah teaches us that we have to perfect our Middos. The Torah obviously helps us do that. But if we don't allow the Torah to help us perfect our Middos, then unfortunately it's an exercise that does not reap the fruits that it's supposed to. Now it's interesting to note that Bnei Yisrael left Mitzrayim as slaves. And in only 49 days, they reached a level that has not been reached since then to receive the Torah at Har Sinai. The question is, how were they able to accomplish so much in relatively so short a period of time? And I heard a beautiful answer, a very realistic answer from Dr. Twersky Zatzal. And he said, if you notice the counting of the Omer, we count one day at a time. Tonight is the first day of the Omer. Tonight is the second day of the Omer. And we're supposed to be perfecting a different midah on each one of those days. It's one step at a time, one midah at a time. You can't go from one extreme to another extreme. You have to do it slowly but surely. And although the mitzvah of Sfiras HaOmer is only between Pesach and Shavuos, the lesson is a lesson that we can use literally for a lifetime. Because the Yetzer Hara tries to convince us and shows us, look how much we have to accomplish. What we have to do is we have to push back and say, I'm not looking at that big picture, I'm looking at the little picture. This is the midah that I'm working on now. Whether it be patience, whether it be hakaras hatov, whether it be my temper, whatever it might be, this is the midah that I'm working on right now. And when I feel that I have somewhat perfected it, I can move on to the next midah. It's one step at a time. It's not all or nothing. And that's what the Torah is teaching us by having us count one day of Sfira towards Maimed Har Sinai, one day at a time. I heard a beautiful story about one of the Admorim from Vishnitz, who was Masada Kedushin at one of his Hasidim's weddings for a child. And right after the chuppah, the Rebbe went over to the Baal Simcha, and he said, I want you to call me as soon as you get home. And the chassid looked at him and said, but Rebbe, I'm not going to be getting home until the wee hours of the morning. He says, I know. I want you to call me as soon as you get home. But Rebbe, there's going to be a mitzvah tans, so I'm not going to get home until maybe even 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. I want you to call me as soon as you get home. So, as a good loyal chassid, as difficult as it was for him, he got home at 3:30 in the morning and he called the Rebbe. The Rebbe answered the phone. He said, give me a minute, let me just wash Nagavasa. And he washed and he asked his chassid, Nu, so how did it go? How was the rest of the night? And his chassid said, it was wonderful. He said, how was the food? Was the food good? He said, the food was great. It was better than I expected. And the dancing, the music, how was that? Was it Lebedik? Oh, it was so Lebedik. It was out of this world. And your guests, Did your guests come? Was the hall filled? Rebbe, they all came. I was so surprised. People that I didn't expect to come, they came. And the Rebbe asked him question after question, even asked him, how was the dessert? And he said, even the dessert was good. And they finished that conversation, which took about a half an hour. And he said, well, I'm happy to hear that it was so successful. You should have mazel, and they should be zocheh to build a bayis dem in Israel. And they hung up. And the Rebbe Shamus, who heard the commotion from the other room, knocked on the Rebbe's door, and he said, I couldn't help but hearing the conversation. Why did you have to speak to this Baal Simcha at 3:30 in the morning? And the Rebbe looked at him and he said, the Baal Simcha became a widower 2 years ago. Normally, after a wedding, the parents of the chassan and the parents of the kala, they go home to their respective homes and they sit down, maybe make themselves a cup of coffee, and they review the wedding. How was this? How was that? Did you like this? Did you like that? This Baal Simcha came home to 4 walls. No one to talk to, no one to share his simcha with. It was the least that I could do to help him share his simcha with somebody else. That's Middos. That's caring about another individual, even if it means getting up at 3:30 in the morning. The Ribono Shalom gives us a challenge, and he sets it between Pesach and Shavuos, just as a guideline for the rest of the year. We have Middos that we all can work on, we all can perfect. No one's perfect, no one expects to be perfect, but we all can be a little better tomorrow than we are today. And that's all the Ribono Shalom expects and wants from us, one day at a time. And we should be zocheh to understand that, to appreciate it, and to realize that we have the ability to be as good as we want to be. And as a good friend of mine always reminds me, do what's right, not what's easy. Have a wonderful day and a Shabbat Shalom.